Yo, hold up. Who the is Bernie Sanders?
It looks like Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Hey, Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders.
Your event will be shut down.
That is none other than
Independent.
Bernie Sanders.
You've heard the name, you've seen the face, but do you really know the man behind the movement? A radical socialist, a leftist extremist who doesn't even stand a chance in his own primaries. These are some of the things people say to discredit Bernie, and it all goes back to a single argument. His ideas, they say, are too progressive for the American public, and his policies are too unrealistic to be taken seriously. We could argue all day to refute these arguments, but we believe actions speak louder than words. Therefore, we'll show you the real Bernie Sanders and what he really stands for. But here's the catch. We'll do it based not on what he's said, but on what he's actually done. Let's take a trip.
1962, Bernie is arrested in Chicago during the civil rights movement for protesting segregation in public schools.
1981, Bernie becomes the mayor of Burlington. Under his term, Burlington becomes the first city in the nation to fund community trust housing. He's reelected 3 times.
1991, Bernie is elected to the House of Representatives. Under his term, he advocates for controversial issues that in the future would prove vital for the nation's well-being.
2006, Bernie is elected to the U.S. Senate and wins re-election in 2012 by a whopping 71% of the popular vote, becoming the longest-serving independent in U.S. congressional history.
During his political career, he takes strong progressive stands like opposing the infamous Citizens United versus FEC ruling, which virtually allowed politicians to be bribed legally.
He opposed the Defense of Marriage Act, the Iraq War, and the Patriot Act. Things that back then no other politician would have even dared to speak against.
Furthermore, he opposed the infamous Keystone XL pipeline. He's currently the only candidate running who actually voted against it.
He also voted to protect Glass-Steagall before the 2008 Great Recession.
This was a bill that could have potentially prevented banks from participating in the infamous and careless investments that led to the Great Recession of 2008.
These are just but a few examples of the many progressive stands Bernie has taken during his political career. As you can see, Bernie has always been one step ahead of the game and has proven time and again that his policies and beliefs are far from fantasies. He has made radical progress in times where being progressive meant political suicide. Getting rid of income inequality, making college tuition affordable, getting money out of politics, properly addressing climate change, fighting for social justice, and reforming Wall Street are but a few policies currently seen in Bernie's platform. The only thing is that he's actually stood by them for more than 40 years. Unlike his counterparts, Bernie doesn't change his beliefs based on what's popular. He doesn't just talk of change, he creates it. And in doing so, he has proven to the nation that a humble independent can not only stand head-to-head against the colossal two-party system, but can also crush them in the polls. However, as opposed to past elections, the Democratic primaries will present a greater challenge for Bernie than any he has faced before. When it comes to securing a Democratic nomination, there's a few things most people don't know.
So what a lot of people don't realize is that when a race is really close, our democratic system does something a little bit undemocratic.
With the nomination decided not by voters, but by superdelegates.
When people come out to vote during primaries, they're not actually deciding which candidate will win the nomination, but rather deciding which delegate gets to vote. And it is those delegates that decide who wins the nomination. Though these delegates are chosen by the people, there is an elite group known as the superdelegates that are not elected, but rather appointed by the Democratic establishment.
And you know a lot of these people. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton,
Al Gore,
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi,
Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
But the idea here is to give established party leaders more control.
These superdelegates make up about 20% of all delegates and answer to no one, meaning they can vote for whomever they please, regardless of what voters want. To show how rigged the Democratic primaries are in favor of those serving the establishment, Hillary Clinton has already been publicly endorsed by more than 300 superdelegates. But Bernie Sanders, the candidate with arguably the best political background in the race, has been publicly endorsed by 10 superdelegates. Why? Because he's an independent. He's an independent who's running for the Democratic nomination for the simple fact that the two-party system is so broken that unless you run under one of these two parties, your voice may never be heard. Both parties take money from banking, media, and oil industries and are practically identical when it comes to defending big corporations. As a result, both Republicans and Democrats see Bernie as a threat, as if he wins the presidency, corporations and lobbying groups that currently finance the two-party system won't be able to benefit from the same loopholes and privileges they currently enjoy. Therefore, the likelihood of Bernie receiving any real support from the superdelegate elite is virtually zero, which means that to win the nomination, Bernie needs to win the popular vote by a massive margin to even stand a chance. The good news is, for Bernie, that's not hard. Bernie has the numbers. In just a few months, he has become one of the most popular politicians in modern history. So what can we do to make sure he gets elected? Simple. Vote. If every one of his supporters votes, even without receiving a single vote from any superdelegate, Bernie would still win the Democratic nomination. By a landslide. All we need to do is vote. Bernie isn't just another politician. He represents a movement, a fighting chance for the 99% of Americans who are tired of being used as pawns in this game called politics. Let's give him the support he deserves. If you support Senator Bernie Sanders, you need to do these 2 things. Number 1, register to vote in the Democratic primaries. In some states, this will require you to register with the Democratic Party. Number 2, show up at the polls and vote for Bernie as soon as your state begins its primaries. We have provided a link in the description of a website that shows you, state by state, how to register, where to vote, and when to vote. It's one thing to post about him on social media. It's another thing to actually show up and take action. If you admire what Bernie is doing, know what he is up against. It's up to us to make a real change. On the day of our primaries, we'll be at the polling stations, ready to vote. Will you?